Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing on the channel at the moment, how about giving this video a like and maybe subscribing to the channel to help us grow, and perhaps even check out our Patreon. Today I'm in Lowestoft for the Lowestoft Model Engineers Exhibition, or Lowmex, which apparently is one of the biggest in the entire country. And the first thing on the list is this that you might remember from the video, a locomotive built in lockdown. And this is it, painted in its new and kind of final form on, like, I don't know, version 4 of the control system he's gone through, but that's it, all done and finished. So with that, we're going to go indoors and check out the show.
The first thing that caught my eye was this stunning Fowler Showman's engine, and inside there were a variety of stationary engines, many of which were running on steam and compressed air, including this model of a 1712 Newcomb steam engine. And for somebody like me, the display of all these different types of engine working was a visual treat, and what I loved was the different levels that people had gone to. This one was made out of scrap materials during the maker's lunch hour, and I think that's fantastic, as was the motion on this Westbury Vulcan beam engine. In fact, the entire table was full of stunning models, with the ones running being truly hypnotising. And it wasn't just model steam engines, there were a good number of operating hot air engines, and the ones I liked the most were these, which were made out of normal household components that you can find just kicking around, showing how easy it is to make a hot air engine. There was also this deacoustic hot air engine, which relies on sound waves bouncing up and down inside that tube, and the hot air engine with their best name ever, the Anti-Insomnia Hypnotron. Equally cool was Curie's pension, with a nickel coin, a magnet and a flame. When it gets hot, it stops being magnetic and flies away from the magnet, cools down and then goes back. The majority of the model steam engines were running on compressed air supplied by the building, but there was a small number of live steam boilers supplying steam for their engines. The variety and different scales of engines were superb, including this teeny tiny little engine running on compressed air, which was just about the size of my finger. The biggest problem was there were so many different designs and engines, I just didn't have the time to film them all. And as well as your traditional stationary engines, there were a good collection of marine engines running away. Next up was my friend Neil's breakdown train in 3.5-inch gauge, featuring this fully working breakdown crane. Now this should run on steam, but it's currently out of ticket, so it was running on air, but remains fully functional with all the lifting and slewing actions that you'd expect from the full-size counterpart. At the head of the train was his 9F, and because it was his, I was allowed to break the golden rule of any show and actually touch the model, and have a little play and try and get it ticking over gently on air. To try and get it running a bit more smoothly, I was able to have a little play with the reverser, and soon I'd got it going pretty well. Now that knocking you can hear is actually a cease bearing on the rolling road, not the engine itself, so don't panic about that. Also running on air was an agricultural traction engine that was built by his father, running a fully functional threshing drum, and they have tested this out with grass, and the answer was yes, it will thresh and separate the seams, but it took almost 2 weeks to disassemble and clean everything out of, so never again. Also throughout the show, you had to keep an eye out at your feet, because there were these things driving around, which was cool. What was also cool were the larger scale models, this lineup of traction engines and a Scammell. They just have such an imposing presence, and of course are fully working models with this fully detailed and functioning cab on the Sentinel. Absolutely superb. Now something I don't know an awful lot about are boats, but I can appreciate the time and effort that's gone into these ones. They are quite stunning models.
One of my favourite things that's here is this absolutely colossal crane, which is built by the same gentleman who's made that beautiful coach over there. This is a thing that is ongoing, but it's going to be amazing when it works. It's going to be steam, the moment it just works on a battery, on a drill, but it's going to be steam operated and it's going to be phenomenal. The amount of hours that have gone into this are just ridiculous.
And the sheer sense and scale and weight alone, it has to travel in its own dedicated trailer behind a car because it's just that colossal. The level of detail that the builder has put into this LNER teak is also quite ridiculous. From the cutlery to the fabric on the seats to the carpet and the overhead baggage net, it's just outstanding, and it really has to be seen to be believed. Keeping on a railway theme, some of the models that have been brought to the show were absolutely outstanding. Just look at the backhead on that. And there was a wide variety from different builders and different regions, and some more stationary engines thrown in for good measure, such as this rather unusual model of an 1862 Whitmore & Sons horizontal mill engine, and I don't think I can recall ever seeing a steam engine set up like this. And just around the corner there was some more slightly smaller railway stuff, with an 08 slowly crawling its way up and down a bone, and yet another crane demonstrating its lifting abilities, and then a huge variety of different models and rolling stock. On a totally different scale was this 32mm layout from HDMS, which is the Halesworth and District Model Engineering Society, who are running a variety of live steam and battery engines, including this absolutely bonkers contraption with overhead train drive to the wheels, and I just thought that was cool.
Where is the whistle and the sort of regulated screw? All the whistle screws.
And then you can't get it wet, can you? It's no good, unlike coal, you can't store it in the open.
Also owned by one of my friends is this amazing Jung. Now, this is based on an engine that used to work in South Africa on one of the longest 2-foot gauge railways in the world. It's 7¼ inch gauge, so when you model 2 foot, you get quite a large engine. And one of my favourite features is inside the cab. This thing has got not only a screw reverser for that, it's also got the lever so you can bring it back and forth. And I just think that's really cool. You could just go, I need to go forward to reverse, but then for that just control, you've got your screw reverser just do a little bit with, and I really like that. I just think it's a really cool model. And I've driven this a few times, and it's something that eventually, when I get some time, I'll do a proper review of it on the channel, because it is a proper cool little engine.
Also running both steam and electric trains was the group behind the Halesworth to Southwold Railway, who have plans to reopen the iconic Southwold Railway. And this little layout was running some of the possible trains that maybe one day they'll be able to run.
Lowestoft from the model show, and only. I think it is.
Also on display was a number of engines that I recognised, like Mammods and Williscos. Elsewhere was this amazing collection of model narrow gauge locomotives, including a Darjeeling D, C and B class, along with appropriate stock for the locomotives. The amount of time and effort that had gone into this was unreal, and it also had some Darjeeling engines in the more traditional and well-known blue livery of the tourist train today. There were also some super quarry Hunslets, including well-known local engine Gwyneth, preserved over at Bressingham. And it wasn't just the narrow gauge that were being modelled. No, the standard gauge was well represented as well, with his absolutely phenomenal Stirling single, this LBSC Rain Hill, which is basically Stephenson's rocket, and this absolute behemoth. There was also the well-known Maid of Kent and a Class 31, amongst other amazing items. Frankly, there was just too much to take in. Having pulled myself away, I got a glance at some of the other models, which included a road roller, a Foden steam lorry, and many locomotives, including an A3 and several diesel shunters. There was just so much to look at on this stand. It was incredible. And speaking of incredible, I lost several hours on this full-size boat simulator. And coming back to real life, I found these amazing tiny dioramas of ships. The amount of detail that had been squeezed into such a tiny model was absolutely outstanding. And most of them were more than just a model. They were recreating a scene with that particular ship in a particular place in time. And keeping with a military theme, next up were warplanes, with so many aircraft from different parts of the world and different times. The detail on these models was absolutely breathtaking. I mean, it was like seriously impressive. Look here at the parts inside the wing, or have a look inside the cockpit with all of the detail. If you saw a photo of this, you would be forgiven for thinking that they were actually real. And there were just so many to see, I couldn't really take it in. And it went from planes to tanks, including this of the AAT from Star Wars, which really made me chuckle. I love the fact that in amongst all of these proper tanks, there's one from Star Wars. From tanks, we moved back to warplanes, and then from warplanes, we moved back to tanks, with many of them on little dioramas. From there, we moved on to model cars, and again, several of them were built with little dioramas to really complete the scene. There were some full-scale dioramas too, including this one of Duxford, and this amazing model of a crease lock that was built from card. Now, I've seen these working out in Poland. Continuing the railway theme was this huge German rail-mounted gun. I wasn't able to move on to the next hall without stopping and gawping at this wonderful burrel, which was in steam, and spent the day trundling about between the two halls for everybody to enjoy. It truly was a work of art. Quite frankly, I wasn't prepared for what met me in the other hall, as there were full-sized astromech droids trundling around, and this just made me very, very happy. There were also a good number of model railways in operation, including Hazel End in O-gauge.
Cool. 1-to-1 scale.
At the other end of the scale was this lovely little N-gauge layout, which had multiple running lines, and so there was a flurry of movement, which meant it was perfect for an exhibition to keep everybody amused, with trains coming in and out at all times.
No, we literally don't do that now. There's no brand new road for it. We built all the structure from 60%. We built all the top, all the angles we've done. It's the only thing that's top of money.
And now for something entirely different. This is Cato Inferno, a 00 gauge steampunk-inspired layout, with lots of bits from Warhammer 40k, like those Valkyries, and lots of hands-on bits that you can do, like this, which activates the T-Rex. It's got lots of locomotives which are modified from other stock. Let me know in the comments below what you think they are, and I really like these hands-on bits. The guy who built this is Lawrie Calvert, and he's the man behind the designs of Hornby's Batic Loc steampunk range, so the guy really knows what he's talking about. And I like the little red alert there, and the fact that when you press this button here, the tank's lights light up for shooting. It's a really interesting and different way to take on model railways, and I think it's kind of cool, and maybe it will appeal to a whole new generation. And no show is complete without some proper old school Hornby 003 wow, and as you guys know, I love this stuff. There was also this super 009 gauge layout with lots of kit-built locomotives, and this marvellous 15-inch in the garden inspired layout with locomotives that you control with that lever you can see on the footplate. Something else that was really cool was this Lego railway with British outline locomotives. This was something that I'd never seen before. Things that were instantly recognisable, like the 86, the Class 20 and the Class 37, all done in Lego. I thought this was fabulous. And as well as that, there was a big collection of Lego Technic, and next door to that were even more model boats, including a steam launch and a wide variety of different scales, and a Batman rubber duck. Now, I don't know much about boats at all, but I really could appreciate the sheer amount of detail and time that have gone into things like this warship. There's just so much fine detail. And I also love this one, showing what can be achieved from a piece of wood. I also loved all the different scales, giving a wide variety of vessels to look at, and for somebody who knows nothing about boats, it was fascinating. Next door to that were some of the trucks that have been making their way along the floor during the show, just like this one here.
And so that brings us to the end of the show. It's got dark and I've come back to where I started, next door to my friend Neil's Locomotive. This has been an amazing show. Everybody here has been so friendly. There's so much to see. It's absolutely incredible and well worth coming to. Can only recommend that you come and do this next year because it was superb. So much to see, so much to do. So excellent. If you have enjoyed this, how about clicking, I know, somewhere over there for some similar stuff, or down there for some other stuff. Yeah, well, I'm on my way home. Ta-ra.